Good afternoon and welcome back to The Longing, where we're going to be continuing to read Metamorphoses. Nope, I clicked the wrong button. Read a book. Metamorphoses. Her, just returning from her father's brook, Jove had beheld, with a desiring look. And, O fair daughter of the flood, he said, worthy alone of Jove's imperial bed. Happy whoever shall those charms possess, the king of gods, nor is thy lover less, invites thee to yon cooler shades, to shun the scorching rays of the meridian sun. Nor shalt thou tempt the dangers of the grove, alone without a guide, thy guide is Jove. No puny power, but he whose high command is unconfined, who rules the seas and land, and tempers thunder in his awful hand. O fly not, for she fled from his embrace, o'er Lerna's pastures he pursued the chase. Along the shades of the Lycian plain, at length the god who never asks in vain, involved with vapours imitating night, both air and earth, and then suppressed her flight. And mingling force with love, enjoyed the full delight. Meantime the jealous Juno from on high surveyed the fruitful fields of Arcady, and wondered that the mist should overrun the face of daylight, and obscure the sun. No natural cause she found from brooks or bogs, or marshy lowlands to produce the fogs. Then round the skies she sought for Jupiter, her faithless husband, but no Jove was there. Suspecting now the worst, she said, am much mistaken, or am much betrayed. With fury she precipitates her flight, dispels the shadows of dissembled night, and to the day restores his native light. The almighty leecher, careful to prevent the consequence of foreseeing her descent, transforms his mistress in a trice, and now in Io's place appears a lovely cow. So sleek her skin, so faultless was her make, even Juno did unwilling pleasure take, to see so fair a rival of her love, and what she was, and whence inquired of Jove. Of what fair herd, and from what pedigree? The god half caught was forced upon a lie, and said she sprung from earth. She took the word, and begged the beauteous heifer of her lord. What should he do? 'Twas equal shame to Jove, or to relinquish or betray his love. Yet to refuse so slight a gift would be but more to increase his consort's jealousy. Thus fear and love by turns his heart assailed, and stronger love had sure at length prevailed. But some faint hope remained his jealous queen, had not the mistress through the heifer seen. The cautious goddess of her gift possessed, yet harboured anxious thoughts within her breast. As she who knew the falsehood of her Jove, and justly feared some new relapse of love, which to prevent and to secure her care, to trusty Argus she commits the fair. The head of Argus, as with stars the skies, was compassed round, and wore 100 eyes. But two by turns their lids in slumber steep, the rest on duty still their station keep. Nor could the total constellation sleep, thus ever present to his eyes and mind. His charge was still before him, though behind. In fields he suffered her to feed by day, but when the setting sun to night gave way, the captive cow he summoned with a call, and drove her back, and tied her to the stall. On leaves of trees and bitter herbs she fed, heaven was her canopy, bare earth her bed. So hardly lodged and to digest her food, she drank from troubled streams defiled with mud. Her woeful story fain she would have told, with hands upheld, but had no hands to hold. Her head to her ungentle keeper bowed. She strove to speak, she spoke not, but she lowed. Affrighted with the noise, she looked around, and seemed to inquire the author of the sound. Once on her banks, where often she had played, her father's banks, she came and there surveyed her altered visage and her branching head, and starting from herself she would have fled. Her fellow nymphs, familiar to her eyes, beheld, but knew her not in this disguise. Even Inachus himself was ignorant, and in his daughter did his daughter want. She followed where her fellows went, as she were still a partner of the company. They stroke her neck, the gentle heifer stands, and her neck offers to their stroking hands. Her father gave her grass, the grass she took, and licked his palms and cast a piteous look. And in the language of her eyes she spoke. She would have told her name and asked relief, but wanting words, in tears she tells her grief, which with her foot she makes him understand, and prints the name of Io in the sand. Ah, wretched me, her mournful father cried. She with a sigh to wretched me replied. About her milk-white neck his arms he threw, and wept. Then these tender words ensue. And art thou she whom I have sought around the world, and have at length so sadly found? So found is worse than lost. With mutual words thou answerst not, no voice thy tongue affords, but sighs are deeply drawn from out thy breast, and speech denied by lowing is expressed. Unknowing I prepared thy bridal bed, with empty hopes of happy issue fed. But now the husband of a herd must be, thy mate and bellwing sons thy progeny. O were I mortal, death might bring relief, but now my godhead but extends my grief, prolongs my woes of which no end I see, and makes me curse my immortality. More had he said, but fearful of her stay, the starry guardian drove his charge away. To some fresh pasture on a hilly height, he sate himself and kept her still in sight. The eyes of Argus transformed into a peacock's train. Now Jove no longer could her sufferings bear, but called in haste his airy messenger, the son of Maia, with severe decree, to kill the keeper and to set her free. With all his harness soon the god was sped. His flying hat was fastened on his head. Wings on his heels were hung, and in his hand he holds the virtue of the snaky wand. The liquid air his moving pinions wound, and in the moment shoot him on the ground. Before he came in sight, the crafty god his wings dismissed, but still retained his rod. That sleep-procuring wand wise Hermes took, but made it seem to sight a shepherd's hook. With this he did a herd of goats control, which by the way he met and slyly stole. Clad like a country swain he piped and sung, and playing drove his jolly troop along. With pleasure Argus the musician heeds, but wonders at those new vocal reeds. And whosoe'er thou art, my friend, said he, up hither drive thy goats and play by me. This hill has browse for them, and shade for thee. The god who was with ease induced to climb, began discourse to pass away the time, and still betwixt his tuneful pipe he plies, and watched his hour to close the keeper's eyes. With much ado he partly kept awake, not suffering all his eyes repose to take, and asked the stranger who did reeds invent, and whence began so rare an instrument, the transformation of syrinx into reeds. Then Hermes thus, a nymph of late there was, whose heavenly form her fellows did surpass, the pride and joy of fair Arcadia's plains, beloved by deities, adored by swains. Syrinx her name, by Sylvians oft pursued, as oft she did the lustful gods delude. The rural and the woodland powers disdained, with Cynthia hunted and her rights maintained. Like Phoebe clad, even Phoebe's self she seems, so tall, so straight, such well-proportioned limbs. The nicest eye did no distinction know, but that the goddess bore a golden bow. Distinguished thus the sight she cheated too, descending from Lycaeus Pan admires the matchless nymph, and burns with new desires. A crown of pine upon his head he wore, and thus began her pity to implore. But ere he thus began, she took her flight, so swift she was already out of sight, nor stayed to hear the courtship of the god, but bent her course to Ladon's gentle flood. There by the river stopped, and tired before, relief from water nymphs her prayers implore. I think we might end it there, because we're over 10 minutes and there's a few pages left, which we'll finish off tomorrow and then decide on the next book. So thank you very much for joining. Hope you have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon or night, no matter what time of day it is. I hope you have a wonderful one of it. And as always, we'll be back tomorrow with more of The Longing. Goodbye.